Gateway to Hell, Book 1 of the Rogue Gods Trilogy by Melinda Kucera, Part 2. Chapter 5. History is tricky. Why did you bring me here? Ivarian tread carefully over the ruins of a temple. Stone columns, collapsed by some event long ago, lay in pieces on the stone platform. But he still didn't know why his uncle brought him here.
This was the seat of our power once.
Uncle Hithaglir extended his arms as he spun slowly, his eyes glowing white with his power. And now only ruins remain. But that doesn't explain why you flashed us here. Ivarian squashed the jealousy ignited just by thinking about that. I'm the son of an ex-goddess, and you'd think that would give me the power to teleport like my mother does. But no, I didn't inherit that ability. He folded his arms. There was nothing he could do except wait for his uncle to transport him back, because no way would he walk back.
Sometimes I miss the old days when they revered and feared us.
Uncle Hithaglir stopped and stared at the ruins of a city surrounding the raised temple. Well, I won't worship you. That would be weird anyway, since you're my uncle. Ivarian tried not to roll his eyes. His uncle was so dramatic sometimes. Uncle Hithaglir was the god of history long ago, and the twin of his mother. At least Mom isn't trying to relive her glory days. Instead, she was pretending to be human and raising half-human demigods while living a mostly normal life in northern Shayari.
I don't want you to.
Uncle Hithaglir folded his arms as the breeze blew his long white hair away from his ageless face. No one would ever guess he was thousands of years old just by looking at him. Then why are we here? You could have given me a history lesson at home. We didn't need to come here for that if that's what's on your mind. It probably was since those were the only lessons his uncle ever gave him. Ivarian wished his uncle would get to the point of this strange meeting. He had chores to do, but he couldn't do any of those things until his uncle transported him back home.
I didn't choose a side in the war for heaven. My sisters pledged their lives to the Creator, and I followed their lead. I figured Faye would pick the right side since she can see the future, and I can't.
Uncle Hithaglir strode toward a large, throne-like chair that was also made of stone. Did no one use any other material back then? Or had time and thieves removed everything but the stonework? After all, the war his uncle spoke of happened thousands of years ago, not last year. I know. Aunt Faye told you and Mom what she planned to do and you all went together. This was all ancient history since it happened thousands of years before he was born. Ivarian rubbed his temples. Why did his uncle want to talk about it now?
Yes, but many of our kind rebelled. I never wondered what happened to them until I ran into one.
Uncle Hithaglir ran his hands down the beading on the sides of his silk tunic. The man liked his finery. Everything he wore cost more gold coins than Ivarian would ever have. Now his uncle wasn't making sense. How did you run into one of the rebel gods? Mom said they're all in hell, and she wouldn't lie about something like that.
I sensed my cousin Geren, the former god of war, and I flashed myself to him just to see if I could.
Uncle Hithaglir smiled, but there was a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, which meant there was more to this story than he was telling. Ivarian thought about calling him on it, then sighed because maybe he didn't want to know. Whatever his uncle was up to likely wouldn't affect him or his life one bit, and pulling the truth out of his uncle would require more time and patience than he had right now.
Don't you want to know what I found?
Uncle Hithaglir ran his hands over the top of the stone throne. No, not really, but Ivarian suppressed a sigh and asked just to move this along. What did you find?
He was creeping around a library. Imagine that. My, how the mighty have fallen. A former god of wars reduced to stealing books from a library in hell.
Uncle Hithaglir threw back his head and laughed. Ivarian didn't know what was so funny about that, nor would he ask because that would just prolong this. Why did you really bring me here? Uncle Hithaglir gazed at the ruins, eyes gleaming with nostalgia.
I miss the old days when our kin reigned over all, and mortals worshipped us. You never saw those days. If you had, you'd miss them too.
Ivarian shifted uncomfortably. His uncle's powers made him uneasy at the best of times. I doubt that. But it doesn't matter because those days are gone. You can't relive them. That part of the past was closed to all visitors, even ex-pagan gods like his mother and uncle.
What if there was a way to bring those days back? Would you help me do it?
Uncle Hithaglir turned and smiled as he extended his hand. What are you talking about? Most of your pantheon fell at the end of the war, and they're in hell. The few who backed heaven are scattered about this world. Ivarian waved to the forested ridge, standing in the distance, beyond the ruins.
You didn't answer my question. If you could raise the old gods and fetch them from their prisons, would you do it?
Uncle Hithaglir still stood, facing him with his hand extended. Was he crazy? Doing something like that would risk another war, and anger the creator of everything, including his delusional uncle. It must be old age, addling his mind. Ivarian couldn't figure out what else would cause it. No one sane would want to challenge the creator.
Well, would you do it if you had a way?
Uncle Hithaglir let his arm fall to his side, and he rested his hand on the cylindrical bulge under his embroidered tunic. Something was sticking out of a pocket in his trousers. A bad feeling sliced through Ivarian like a knife made of ice, and he shivered. What did you do, Uncle?
While I was in that library in hell, I found a spell.
Uncle Hithaglir reached into his pocket under his tunic and withdrew a rolled-up scroll that was longer than his hands. Ivarian didn't want to ask about the scroll, but that was his role in this family drama, so he might as well get on with it. Mom would want to know what her twin brother was up to anyway. What does the spell do? Somehow he asked that with a straight face, and without rolling his eyes. I deserve an award for this. But there wouldn't be one, just a trip home if he was lucky. Ivarian suppressed a sigh. It was so unfair that he couldn't teleport himself home and get out of this strange conversation.
It says it can summon any god. If it does what it says, then we can bring back the old pantheons and restore our power.
Uncle Hithaglir waved the scroll like a baton. Ivarian felt his eyes widen, and they threatened to pop out in shock. That's a dangerous spell. You should put it back where you found it, and his uncle should definitely not use it or even touch it in case that could ignite the spell.
No, I should use it to return us to glory.
Uncle Hithaglir unrolled the scroll, then glared at it like it just offended him. What's wrong? Ivarian hoped his uncle grabbed the wrong scroll, and he just found out it held a recipe for stew or some other mundane thing instead of a powerful summoning spell.
A human mage must perform the rite it describes.
Uncle Hithaglir rolled up the scroll and glared at it like he could will the thing to allow him to use it. Ivarian sat on a section of a collapsed column as relief washed over him. Thank God for picky spells. Well, then there's your answer. I can't use it. I'm not a human mage. Nope, he was half human and half of a reduced deity that never fell. Sometimes I don't know what I am. Uncle Hithaglir tilted his head like he was listening to someone, but no one was there except them. He nodded.
Yes, that makes sense.
What does? Who are you listening to? Ivarian glanced around just to make sure no one showed up when he wasn't looking. After all, he heard a faint buzzing like the drone of insects. Maybe his uncle heard voices in his head. That would explain his strange request.
I need you to take this 16 years into the past. Yes, that will work better. If our pantheon's restored in the past, when you were just a wee thing, then you'll grow up like a proper demigod, with the power that should have been yours, not like a ghost, hiding from the magic haters. They should fear you, not the other way around.
Uncle Hithaglir strode toward him, the scroll in his hand. No, I won't do it. Ivarian shook his head. It's too dangerous to change the past, even in a small way. Doing so could split the timeline or alter the future, and Mother would be furious if she found out. Uncle Hithaglir's face reddened.
Your mother lives like a human, and she lets humans order her around like she's a servant. I'd kill them for that, but she'd hate me for it.
They don't order her around. That's not how things are. Ivarian rose and felt anger heat his face and probably turn it red too. Sometimes he wished for a darker complexion that didn't flush with anger or any other emotions. He couldn't sit there and listen to his uncle badmouth his father when the man had never been unkind to anyone. Why do you care about how my mother lives? She's happy living a simple life. Not everyone wants people to fawn all over them. Uncle Hithaglir held both hands up and surrendered to placate him.
That's true. I shouldn't have said anything. It's not my place to judge.
But Ivarian couldn't let this go, not when he was grateful his mom gave him and his siblings a normal life. No, it's not. You like to gallivant around? Mom doesn't. She wanted a home and a measure of peace, and after centuries of roaming, she found it 30 years ago when she married my father. Don't you dare say anything bad about my family.
I'm sorry, I was out of line. Will you forgive me?
Uncle Hithaglir extended his hand like a peace offering, but it was the one holding the scroll. Ivarian waited for the storm of emotions roiling around inside him to calm down before nodding. Of course I forgive you. You're my uncle. But he didn't shake his uncle's hand, because he'd touched the spell, and he must avoid that since he didn't know what would trigger it.
Then will you take this to the past for me? There were more mages then.
Uncle Hithaglir shook the scroll. Ivarian shook his head. No, I won't endanger the timeline or go against my mother's teachings. Take me home, and get someone else to do your bidding.
Not until you agree to help me.
Hithaglir turned to Ivarian with a sly smile. Ivarian turned his back on him. No, I won't help you with this. Ask for something else.
Fine, I'll bring back the old days without your help.
With that, Hithaglir teleported away. Ivarian stood alone in the ruined temple. At least it still had a roof, but that was all it had going for it. Am I still in my own time?
Chapter 5. The Secret Chamber. Garen leaned against a shelving unit full of leather-bound tomes and rubbed his eyes. How long have I wandered around this place? Was it only hours or had days passed since he entered its hallowed halls? A grinding sound startled him out of a light doze, and it signaled a secret door unlocked, right before the bookcase slid aside to reveal a hidden chamber. Hopefully it held secrets, not just more books and scrolls. Now this looks promising. I wonder what's in here. Garen passed ancient texts carved on stone slabs that towered over him. A shiver ran up his spine as he scanned the text of one. but he didn't recognize any of the glyphs, so he wandered around the steels toward the pedestal in the center of the room. An eerie, otherworldly light illuminated an ancient tome sitting on a stone pedestal. It was bound in dark blue leather and adorned with glowing symbols that seemed to writhe and twist as he looked at them. This might be the very thing he searched for, the Book of Names. It certainly looked impressive, as a book with such dangerous knowledge should. His hands trembled as he reached for the book, even though it was probably booby-trapped or under a spell. But he didn't care about that. The spells can't kill me. They can just hurt me, but who cares about that? I'm ready to end this part of my mission. His hands bounced off the shield around the book, but the spell didn't burn, freeze, or disintegrate his fingers, so that was a win. He just needed to break the shield or turn it off by overloading the spell creating it. Then the book would be his. Garen glanced around the chamber. It had the same soaring ceiling as all the other ones to accommodate the stone steels. He felt the magic radiating off the steels as he sized them up. Which one could he lift in his reduced state and use to smash the shield? If he was right about the steel's purpose, then the magic stored within them should overload the shield if released in a burst. Garen picked the shortest one, but it was still tall enough to reach the middle of his chest. "You'll do." He crouched before it, wrapped his arms around the steel, and rose while pushing upward with all the strength in his leg muscles. The steel rose with him, and his lower back muscles ached when he staggered over to the shield. Just a little further. Garen huffed and puffed like he was running a marathon, not waddling around obstacles while clutching a heavy stone slab. When he reached the shield, his plan fell apart, and he thrust the steel at it with shaking arms, then dove aside. He expected at the very least a shower of magical particles. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Neither did the steel break into pieces nor release its pent-up energy. Instead, it floated there, caught in the shield, while a rainbow of colored streaks of light raced over the carved symbols. Oh! The steel shook as he scrambled to find better cover. But the shield pulsed in a strobing pattern that threatened to mesmerize him and freeze him in his tracks. Garen ducked behind another steel just in time. A bright flash followed by a concussive wave of force rocked the steel he hid behind. But ropes anchored it to the wall and ceiling, so it didn't fall. Garen waited until the magic settled down from the explosion. Then he strode toward the book. "At last you're mine." As his fingers brushed against the edges of the leather tome, a laugh echoed through the chamber. "Damn it, I need to get the book and get out of here." Unfortunately, there was only one way out of the chamber, and that's where the laughter came from. Well, I wanted a fight, but he'd wanted a winnable one, and this might not be one.
"What are you doing here?"
Asked the same demon he ran into before, but his eyes fixed on the ancient tome, not him. "I'm looking for a book from my master, obviously. What else would I be doing here?" Garen rolled his eyes like an annoyed servant might. At least he thought that's how they would react, but he didn't interact with them much before the fall, so he might be wrong. Garen reached for the Book of Names. No shield got in his way this time. As he gripped the ancient tome tightly, he wondered how he could fight while holding it. The damned thing was longer than his hands and about 3 inches thick, but it was curiously light when he lifted it off its pedestal. "You're mine now." A soft purple light wrapped around the book, and his hands tingled. But it didn't hurt him or push his hands away. "Why is the book glowing?" Garen stared at it. Was he supposed to recite something to claim it? Or was there another spell on the book to repel thieves and prevent the book from leaving the library?
"Put that book down. You don't know what you're messing with,"
said the demon, running through the narrow aisle between the steels.
"All of hell will hunt you down if you try to take it from here."
"Maybe I'm just here to consult this book, not steal it." Garen hugged the book to his chest since that was a less awkward way to carry it. But that meant his hands weren't free to fend off the demon coming his way. "And I need to get past him to get out of this chamber." A name popped into his mind as he tried to think of opening moves that didn't require his hands to be free. The name repeated in his head, pushing out all other thoughts. "Antares," Garen said like a curse. The air crackled with energy like he cast a spell when he didn't. But the demon froze mid-step and didn't move a muscle, not even his eyes when Garen approached him. Interesting. Is he really frozen or is he just faking it to lull me into walking past him? I changed my mind. Just reading the book won't do. I need to take it with me. Garen waited, but the demon didn't react. Not even a flicker of emotion passed across his red face. Perhaps he couldn't move after all. Well, there's only one way to find out. Garen charged toward the demon and slammed his shoulder into the creature's chest and knocked him down. The demon still didn't move, not even to cushion his fall. Garen ran past him, not caring if he stepped on the demon. He didn't look down to check, or side to side to look for other demons. He just raced for the exit and jumped over the rubble from the broken stone slab. Once through the secret door, he scanned the bookcases nearby for a way to shut it. But all the books looked the same except for the writhing words on their spines, and they didn't stay still long enough to read them. I don't have time to waste. I need to get out of here. But he didn't know where the exit was. Could I find that crawl space again and exit the way I came in? The library was a labyrinth of dark corridors lined with ancient tomes and scrolls. Which one led to the first room he found? They all looked the same as he chose one at random and hurried through an aisle walled by books. Garen stopped at another intersection and stared at the same chamber he just left. Am I going in circles?
Yes.
Whispered someone, but there was no one there, just endless shelves of books. I must have imagined that voice. Garen picked a direction and strode through the corridor to another dimly lit chamber full of books. A deep voice echoed through the chamber, causing Garen to freeze in his tracks.
Who dares to enter my domain?
Asked someone in the chamber with him. Do I go back to the intersection and pick another hallway? Garen didn't want to do that. The intersection was confusing, and there was no guarantee the other corridors led anywhere better. No, I'd better stay here. Maybe I can bluff my way out of this again. It was worth a try, anyway. I got what my master asked for, and now I'm looking for an exit. Can you direct me to one? Garen slipped behind a bookcase and peered through a gap between the books at the next aisle, but he still didn't see the speaker.
What did your master send you to look for?
Asked the man, who was probably a fallen angel. His voice was too mellifluous to be anything else. Garen crept to the end of the aisle and peered into a hole in the ground wide enough for an Ifrit to fall through. The other aisles, angled away from it like spokes on a wheel, is just an old scroll, full of numbers. Nothing exciting, Garen lied.
Even so, nothing may leave the library. Your master knows this, so I can only assume he sent you to serve me.
A man jumped up through the hole in the floor and landed on the circular edge, framing it. Yup, he was one of the fallen, from his long gray nails to his soot-stained white robes and the golden collar around his throat that was once a halo. Now it was a reminder that he, too, was a prisoner of hell.
Genial.
Whispered the same voice that told him the demon's name. What are you saying? Garen backed away in shock. That couldn't be right. The sleeping angel sent him, and she asked him to take the book to her people. He couldn't do that if this creature was right. No, I don't believe him. This fallen angel is lying to me.
You're my slave now, and you arrived just in time to shelve some books. But first, give me that.
Argeniel stalked toward him, his hand extended to take the book of names. You can't have it. It's mine, Argeniel. Garen spat the fallen angel's name like it was a scourge on all humankind. Maybe he was.
What did you call me?
The fallen staggered backward and pressed a hand to his brow, momentarily covering his glowing violet eyes. Argeniel, that's your name, isn't it? Garen strode toward him, holding the book out like a shield. It says so in here, and this book holds the truth, right? Shall we see what other truths it holds? Garen opened the book of names, and it shook and shot violet beams of light out of it. What's it doing? Garen couldn't let go of the damned thing. His fingers gripped the book as it writhed, like a living thing. What the hell is wrong with this thing?
It's seeking something. What instructions did you give it?
Argeniel actually sounded curious. Nothing. It just told me your name. I didn't tell it to do anything. I didn't know I could do that. Garen still found the idea of a book doing anything except storing knowledge or a good story unbelievable. But the fallen angel's questions now had him wondering if a book could do other things. Well, he got his answer a moment later when the book shrank until it was no longer than his pinky. Then it slammed into his chest and knocked him backward through the circular hole in the floor.
Get him and bring back that book.
The fallen angel shouted at someone. Garen fell through another circular opening, and then another, and another, until he lost track of how far he fell. Red talons closed around his upper arms and their owner flew upwards, arresting his fall. He laughed when he realized a demon saved him. Where were you the last time I fell? Garen laughed at his own question, then sobered when he didn't see the book of names. The she-demon ignored him and concentrated on flying upward through the circular holes without damaging him or her wings. Where did the book go? Garen twisted to look down, but there was only an orange glow far below. The book of names was gone, and with it, his one chance to get revenge.
No, not gone.
Whispered the same voice that told him the demon and the fallen angel's name. A warm feeling in his chest made Garen pull the neckline of his tunic down to expose a black, book-shaped mark on his chest. Purple ink spilled out of it and spelled a name, but it was upside down from his vantage and not useful.
Desdemona.
Said that voice again. That must be the she-demon's name. Garen didn't say it aloud, but he held it in reserve for when they landed. Then he would weaponize it. Until then, he hung on and enjoyed the ride through the center of the library. Unfortunately, he still couldn't see a way out in the glimpses he caught of the levels they passed. Desdemona finally stopped and set him down on the stone floor in front of Argeniel. The fallen angel tapped his long gray nails on the floor, impatiently as he bent over Garen.
Where's the book?
The fallen studied him, but Garen had covered his chest and the mark already, so he saw nothing. It's gone. I dropped it when I fell. Garen rolled over and pointed into the hole.
Then you can fetch it.
Arginio grabbed a handful of his tunic and trousers and hurled him through the hole in the floor. This time, Desdemona didn't fly to his rescue, but he didn't blame her for staying put. She only saved him the last time because the Fallen ordered her to. As he fell through the hole in the center of each level, Garen flailed around for something or someone to stop his fall. What would happen if I called her true name? Could I command her to arrest my fall again? That would probably push his luck too far. After all, he was part minor deity still, so the fall wouldn't kill him, but it would damage him a lot. Who knows how long it'll take me to heal up enough to escape, assuming escape is possible. Glowing green motes appeared around him, and he batted them away on reflex. No way would he get caught in someone else's spell. But the stupid things kept multiplying until they engulfed him.
Gweren, god of war, I call you. The circle binds you to this time and place. You must come.
A woman shouted, but her voice sounded like it came from far away. Green light blinded him. Garen knew nothing more as the spell catapulted him upward toward an uncertain fate. But anything must be better than what awaited him below.
Chapter 7. Alone and in ruins. Ivarian paced the platform the ruined temple stood on just to do something. Uncle Hithaglir can't leave me here, not for long anyway. He won't risk angering my mother, or would he? Ivarian shivered as cold fear knifed through him. Does Mom even know I left? Probably not, since Mom was out when Uncle Hithaglir showed up, and his uncle could have taken him back in time to any year he wanted. That would keep anyone in the present from noticing his absence. God damn it. Did he take me back in time when he teleported me here? Ivarian scanned the ruins and the hill it sat on for clues. How could he tell if this was his own time? I don't think he took me back in time. I would have felt it if he time walked, since I have the same power. And Ivarian didn't feel the dislocation being out of place in time usually caused. He just felt lost and alone. Not even the birds called. This place was eerily silent when he stood still. Then I'm probably in my own time. But that didn't really help, since he didn't know where home was in relation to here. He could just hope his uncle would regain his senses and return for him before someone noticed he wasn't where he should be. Since I'm stuck here for now, I'd better look around for shelter, food, and water, because I need them right now. And I just had the clothes I'm wearing. Where should I look for those items? Maybe down in the remains of the city. That seemed like a good idea. So Ivarian circled the edge of the platform until he found a set of cracked stairs leading down to a broad avenue lined by crumbling buildings. Ivarian wandered through the streets of the abandoned city until he spotted a river in between two buildings. Please let that water be drinkable. As he hurried toward it, he felt the currents of time flowing past him, and he stopped in his tracks. Something disturbed time here, so it ran in wavy lines instead of straight and true from the deep past to the far future. What disturbed the fabric of time here? Ivarian extended his hands and ran his fingers over the bend in the flow of time, both above and below it, taking its measure. It was shaped like a man. What did you do, Uncle? Did you cause this? Shadows flickered in his peripheral vision, but they were draped in fabric like in olden times. He heard snatches of conversations in a language very different from the modern share, and one that he knew. Hello? Is anyone here? Ivarian turned around, but the voices and the images faded back into the invisible currents of time. He still felt their presence like a lingering stain on the city, and that just made him feel more alone and lost as the sky darkened above. I'd better check if that water is drinkable. Ivarian climbed over the last bits of rubble between him and the once manicured banks of a swiftly flowing river. Thirst burned his throat as he bent and scooped up a handful of water. It was clear and cool, and it sated his thirst as he sat on a carved bench made of stone. Ivarian had water now and plenty of places to shelter if he didn't mind sleeping on a stone floor. But still no food, and no sign of his uncle. He'll come back for me, he must. I'm his nephew. He can't leave me here forever. As night fell around him, Ivarian wished he could light a fire with his magic, but he didn't have fire magic. His magic could just move him backward in time, then back to the present, and that was it really. Thankfully, the night was clear, and the moon was waxing, not waning, so he had some light. But the longer he sat here, the more shadows of people who lived long ago appeared, as if the barrier between them was thinning. Of course it wasn't. He'd sensed something like that. But he just sensed that something warped time here. I wish I knew why. What did you do, Uncle? Only silence answered him and the lapping of the waves against the riverbank in front of him. It was the loneliest sound too, because it echoed off the cobbled streets and the stone buildings lining them. You can't just leave me here. Come back, Uncle Hithaglir. Ivarian picked up a stone and threw it into the river. His uncle liked his tricks and his treats, but this was taking things too far. He must be watching from somewhere. You can't just leave me here in a ruined city with no food, no shelter, and not even a blanket. What did I ever do to him except say no to his crazy scheme? That shouldn't sentence me to all eternity stranded in this place. Ivarian kicked a rock into the river, but that didn't make him feel any better. He wanted to kick his uncle for this, but he wasn't stupid enough to try. One didn't strike an ex-god, even if they were family. Since sitting here wasn't making him feel any better, he rose and walked back toward the platform and the ruined temple to check for his uncle. If that trickster waited somewhere nearby, he'd pick somewhere that he could see that temple. I'll bet he's standing on a hill outside the city, watching me. Of course, he had no way to check that except to hike over there and look for himself, but he wouldn't do that unless he knew his uncle was there. Unfortunately, his powers didn't give him any clues about his uncle's whereabouts. That was likely because of the differences between their powers. Ivarian never really thought about how his uncle's magic worked until now, but it was too late to ask. All he could do was wait and hope that his uncle came back for him, and that just grated on his nerves. You can leave me here for all time, and I still won't help you with your crazy scheme. Ivarian clenched his fists as he hiked back to the ruined temple.
As Hithaglia gazed out from a hill overlooking the ancient city, he fiddled with the beaded edge of his tunic. Ivarian was somewhere in the city now. Likely he was searching for water or food. I should have left him a water skin and a loaf of bread. Guilt gnawed at Hithaglia. He didn't have any children that he knew of, despite sleeping with everyone who caught his fancy. But he never wanted kids, either. His sisters had enough children between them to continue the bloodline for eternity, and he could visit them whenever he wanted. Well, maybe not Faye's kids. She might throw him out on sight since she could see the future of all his schemes, but his twin sister couldn't, so he was welcome in her home as long as he pretended he was a mundane human. Hithaglia rolled his eyes, as if he could ever be mundane. Her brood was as boring as their mother, except for Ivarian. Hithaglia cursed. He spent too long wool-gathering and had lost sight of his nephew. Istiana will kill me if I let anything happen to her son, but she wouldn't need to do that, because Hithaglia would do anything to keep that boy safe. That was why he stood, rooted to the spot as the sun set and the moon rose. I can't abandon him, no matter how mad he makes me sometimes. I love him too much. A metallic buzzing signaled he wasn't alone on this hill. Hithaglia turned as a swarm of tiny metal insects converged on the space in front of him. They stacked up into a roughly humanoid form from the waist up with clocks for eyes, but the hands on each eye spun in opposite directions as the metallic creature bowed to him. Hithaglia backed away from the unnatural thing as a wave of revulsion rolled through him. The hive-minded agents of chaos were unsettling, and they dragged entropy in their wake, disturbing the currents of time and probably magic too. But they came to him the last time he visited here, and told him about the spell. Hithaglia glanced at the leather rucksack lying on a nearby boulder. He tucked the scroll inside it earlier, so it was hidden from sight now.
"We come as friends,"
said 1,000 buzzing voices, slightly out of sync with each other as the super agent of chaos rolled toward him on the backs of thousands of metal insects. "What do you want?" Hithaglia stood his ground by sheer force of will.
"Control is not chaos."
"I know. Are you certain 16 years is far enough back to accomplish what I hope?" Hithaglia didn't want to say any more of his plan aloud, lest an angel hear it and take word of it to the Creator.
"Yes, it must be 16 years before now, so your nieces and nephews benefit."
"Why then and not further back?" Hithaglia tried to silence the soft voice of his conscience, warning him that his actions would spark another war of gods and monsters. "I'll spirit my twin and her family away to somewhere safe, and they'll be fine." He didn't need to worry about Faye or her family, because she was the final fate and she'd know what he was doing before he did it. Hithaglia glanced behind him to make sure his other sister didn't appear when he wasn't looking to put a stop to this. But she didn't. Faye, or Phaedrison as she used to be known, didn't come to stop him. She must know what I'm doing. She can see the future. Perhaps she approved of his plan, or maybe she was just busy. After all, she had many more children than his twin sister. But that just made it even more imperative to act now, before Faye noticed his plans.
"You found the spell, right?"
The super agent of chaos waved to get his attention. "Yes, it was where you said it would be." And that raised many interesting questions, like how had the agents of chaos known the spell was in a library in hell? But Hithaglia didn't ask because they probably put it there.
"But the past remains unchanged. Control is not chaos. You must get the spell to someone who can use it, or your family will die."
The composite metal creature hissed, but its voices were out of sync, giving its words a strange echo effect. "What are you talking about? You didn't say my family would die when we first spoke about this." But Hithaglia couldn't recall if he'd asked about the repercussions. Did visions of the old days blind me to that? Every action had a reaction, and the more powerful the action, the worse the reaction was when it came. But death, surely that was too high a price for stealing a spell from hell, or was it? What could an archdemon do? Hithaglia shivered as he remembered the host of angels with their glowing halos and shining spirit swords, scything through the army of monsters his fellow gods assembled like they were harvesting wheat. Rank upon rank fell in bloody pieces, but they rolled on through them because their god commanded it.
"They will come for the spell, and they will find it if you don't hide it 16 years in the past."
"Why there?" Hithaglia shook himself out of his reverie. His side had done far worse in that long-ago war.
"Because there's more chaos then, and that makes powerful objects harder to sense, even for an archangel."
Hithaglia clenched his fists. I can't take the spell to the past, or I'd have done so already. And it's not just because my sisters will know what I did the instant I do it. Because the Creator curtailed his freaking powers when he swore to serve him. I physically can't move objects through time in either direction. I can only take what I am wearing. My powers are constrained. He could teleport objects anywhere in the world in the present, but that wouldn't solve his time travel problem.
Find a way. Time's running out.
I'm trying, but my nephew refuses to cooperate. The super agent of chaos made a sound like the clicking of 1,000 tiny gears as it opened and closed its articulated hands.
Yes, that is chaos. Control is not chaos. He must do this of his own free will.
I know, but I can't convince him. He doesn't know what it's like to be worshipped like a god. I miss those days and the power I once had. Hithaglia blinked away the mist covering his sight. Now wasn't the time to relive those old memories. Not now when he had a way to bring those days back.
There's only one way to gain the power you need to do what you hope for, and you have it. There's nothing else we can do. Control is not chaos, and we desire chaos.
The super agent of chaos dissolved back into a swarm of clockwork insects that sparkled in the moonlight.
Hurry, or you'll lose all chance to reclaim your glory days.
The swarm vanished, leaving Hithaglia alone with his troubled thoughts and his desire for power and glory. The two warred within him. He wanted the old days when magic was wild and free back so badly. He could taste it, and it tasted metallic. The way back to that was in his rucksack, if he could just get it to the past.
Chapter 8. Spell interrupted. Garen floated in the heart of the green light surrounding him, as his body disintegrated into sparkling motes, then reformed in a hurry when a roar shattered the summoning spell.
No, you can't have him.
Arginil shouted. The green light released Garen, and the stink of brimstone burned his nose, leaving a metallic taste of danger in his mouth, and God damn him, because that just made him feel all warm and tingly all over. But that might be because of the heat wafting up from the orange glow far below. Look out below. I'm coming in hot and sweaty, but that's about to be the least of my problems if I don't catch hold of something and stop myself from falling into a lava pit below. Because of course the Library of Forbidden Knowledge stood on a lake of lava. Where else would a bunch of demons build it? Not somewhere safe from fire. Where would the fun be in that? He laughed as he fell through the library. His idiot cousin had actually found someone foolish enough to summon him from hell, just to be thwarted by a fallen angel. What plans did that ruin? Garen could only guess as he plummeted past 2 more levels while he collected his scattered wits. Before he could fall past another one, he extended his arms and legs and spread them wide, like a starfish, and hoped the holes narrowed as he fell. If they didn't, then he might end up extra crispy when he hit the lava pooling below. Through the circular floor and in another 4 levels he fell, but his fingers and toes grazed the edges of the next one. They are narrowing. They must shrink if they want to keep the lava out of the library and away from the books. Someone could have spelled the books and scrolls to make them impervious to fire. Garen tried to extend his arms and legs even further, but the holes in the floors below him widened, and he couldn't catch a finger or toe on them. Damn it, he must grab something. The heat rising from below was suffocating him with its rotten egg stink, and his sweat sizzled as it evaporated away. Well, this might be the end of me. One charbroiled ex-god of war coming up. But he hoped something would stop that because he needed to know how Hithaglia found someone to use the summoning spell. Why the hell did he want to summon me, anyway? Unfortunately, there was no way to know now since the fallen angel blocked the summons, and I'm back to falling toward an uncertain fate. That probably should have scared him. Instead, he laughed at Hithaglia's plan going so awry after the theft. I wonder who he'll call next since he can't summon me. I'm not the only former god of war, though. There were 3 others Garen had met during the war, and probably others he hadn't. But I'm the most well-known, of course. His ego wouldn't allow him to be anything else for the moments it took for him to fall past the lowest level of the library. He closed his eyes and braced for a fiery impact. I wonder if my bones will explode. A shadow fell over him. I wonder what's casting it. Surely not someone coming to save me. Garen laughed because no one in the library would save him from a fiery end. I wonder if the lava will finally end me. Though it probably wouldn't since his magic base was fire magic. He didn't have access to most of it, so maybe it would hurt him. Pain stabbed his lower left leg as claws wrapped around his shin and dug into his calf muscle. Then something jerked him upward. What the hell had grabbed hold of his leg? Garen opened his eyes and stared into the fiery chasm a few feet below him. His hair singed, and he was never so glad he kept it short enough to fit under a helmet.
Where's the book?
Arginil demanded as hot air buffeted them from his soot-stained wings. Scorching air blasted up from the lava pit below, and waves of heat blistered his skin. Garen struggled because he was supposed to, but he didn't want to get free right now. Not when that meant falling into a fiery chasm far below. Nor did he want to be in the clutches of one of the most powerful beings in hell. But a rescue was a rescue, and one didn't quibble with one's rescuer, no matter how distasteful they might be. I need to string him along so he'll take me away from this stinking pit of boiling lava. I need a damn diversion. And he had one, thanks to his cousin. Hithaglia gave him the perfect cover story. I don't have it, or I'd give it to you in trade for my freedom.
Where is it?
Arginil shook him, sending a jolt of pain through his wounded leg. I wish I knew. I had the book, until my damned cousin tried to summon me, but I lost it when you shattered the summoning spell. Garen folded his arms to get them away from the lava, and he glared at the fallen angel flying above him. The angel clenched his fists so tightly that his claws pierced his palms and drew blood, but he didn't relax them or even seem to notice he was bleeding all over his dirty gray robes.
Why would he summon you just to steal a book? That doesn't make sense.
Garen sighed like he imagined a long-suffering relative might in this situation. Yeah, well, I ran into him earlier and he stole the scroll I was reading, so nothing about any of this makes any sense. He probably took the book just to spite me. That part was actually true too. A cruel smirk spread across the angel's pale demonic features.
We'll discover if you're telling the truth at the spire.
I've told you all I know. Garen suppressed a shiver of fear at that news. I escaped it once, and I'll do it again. But how many pieces would he be in this time? I'll escape somehow, even if I have to crawl on my belly like a worm. That vertical sprawl won't hold me captive forever.
Then you've nothing left to lose. The spire awaits.
Arginil dug his claws in deeper as he pumped his wings and flew them upward. A trickle of blood trailed behind them as Garen cursed his cousin. I hope there are no demons who can sense the truth at the spire. Otherwise, he'd be in big trouble. As Arginil ascended through the library, the oppressive heat from below lessened, as if a spell held it at bay, so the library itself was cooler. His claws still pierced Garen's leg, but he could ignore that pain since it was a ton less than he would suffer if he fell into that lava. Arginil slowed at every level and scanned the area around the hole, like he expected to find the book of names lying there. Does he really think I would throw away such a valuable book like it was trash? Garen tried not to shake his head in consternation, but it was hard not to. So he kept his arms folded over his chest to keep his tunic from riding up enough to show the tattoo of a winged book on his chest. He didn't know if Arginil knew the book of names could tattoo itself on the unwary, and he didn't want to find out by showing the mark to him either. That needed to stay his secret for now. We won't find it in the library because I didn't throw it away. I told you who took it, so why don't you get your friends together and figure out how to take it back? I'm sure you have minions in the mortal world who could fetch it for you. Actually, Garen knew no such thing, but now he was curious. How far could Arginil and his cronies reach? Could they steal an item from the mortal world?
Why did your cousin take it? He can't use it. No one can.
Arginil must have given up his search because he extended his arms above his head like he was diving, and they shot upward far faster than angels should be able to fly. The fortress-like library dropped away below them, and the barren land dotted by ruins spread out as they flew toward a black spike rising over the rocky plain. Cold air buffeted Garen, and it felt so good on his overheated skin. I don't know why he does anything. I think all that time walking addled his mind. Garen shook his head and rubbed his arms like he was cold even though he wasn't, but he needed some pretext for keeping his arms crossed over his chest other than the real reason. Wind-borne ash and fumes made Garen cough as they flew higher and punched through the black clouds covering this part of hell. A burnt orange sky blazed above them as they flew toward the top of the spire. A dragon's shadow passed over them, but Arginil didn't react to that, or his long black hair blowing in his eyes. At last, just when the pain became unbearable, Arginil angled toward a narrow platform between the sharp metal points that rose above the spire's roof. He retracted his claws and Garen plummeted the last few feet to land on the black stones of the roof.
You'll tell the interrogators everything you know and you'll beg for mercy, but no mercy will come for you. It abandoned this place long ago.
Arginil spun and flew away as clawed feet pounded up the stairs, and good riddance. Garen ripped a strip from his tunic and wrapped it around his wounded leg. It would do for now and keep the blood-addicted prisoners and jailers from coming after him for a little while. Anyway, now I just need to escape, but that won't be easy. I need more information to plan that, and probably someone with magic. 2 guards exited the staircase. Both were low-level demons who were hardly stronger or more powerful than him, but they had sharp claws, and he didn't. They reached for his arms, but he pivoted to avoid them until a dark shadow, shaped like a dragon, darkened the roof. Could it sense that he had the Book of Names inside him? The Book of Names whispered names in the back of his mind, but he ignored them because that knowledge would just give away the fact that he still had it. Besides, he couldn't fly, so using the names it provided wouldn't help him escape now. But later, when he was ready, it would. So he bit his lip to keep from saying anything lest the true names bouncing around his brain slip out and tell the demons and dragons the book's whereabouts. Okay, new plan. Don't give the dragon a reason to eat you. Garen raised both hands to show he surrendered, and the giant shadow moved on. He let the guards seize his arms and drag him down the stairs to the topmost floor of the spiral fortress. Garen gnashed his teeth. He'd never submitted to his captors in his long life, not willingly anyway. Just stay calm. You're playing along until you find an unguarded spot to ditch your jailers. And this wasn't it. 4 fallen angels watched him from where they stood by a half-closed door. Their conversation ceased, and they all glared at him until his guards dragged him down a sloping corridor to another level. but they passed a dozen Efreets sitting around on padded chairs like they were at a meeting. The next level was no better since 2 vampires and a wolfman inhaled deeply when they marched by. There are plenty more levels, and we'll pass them to get to the interrogators. Just be patient. But patience wasn't something he possessed even in the best of times. Garen lost count of how many levels they wandered through before only cells surrounded them. No other guards appeared, and he heard nothing but the clinking of chains. Finally, Garen wrenched his arms free of the guard's grasp and bolted. Downward seemed like the best option right now since he needed to get to ground level and find a door that led to the plain surrounding the spire.
Come back here. No one escapes the spire.
The guards shouted other things too as they chased him, but they were wrong about no one escaping this place. I got out once and I'll do it again. Though probably not right now since he still didn't know where the exit was in relation to where he was, and that was a huge problem. No, this was just a reconnaissance mission, and a test to see how quickly his guards raised an alarm and summoned help. Garen rounded a bend and dashed down another ramp, but the guards jumped over the railing and tackled him to the ground. Well, there went that avenue of escape. They were better trained than the last time he was here. Guard number 1 struck the back of his head, probably to stun him, but he didn't hit hard enough to do that. He probably doesn't know I was a war god, or that I have a very hard head. Garen chuckled. What was that? A love tap?
You think that's funny? Wait a few hours. The interrogators will have you squealing like a pig.
Guard number 2 said. They hauled him to his feet and dragged him over to a waiting cell. Its door was already open to admit them. The 2 guards threw Garen inside, then slammed the door shut.
Next time you run, you'll regret it.
Guard number 1 said. Yeah, right, Garen muttered as he limped to the cot and dropped onto it. His energy ran out of him as the adrenaline dumped from his system, making his eyes heavy with the need to sleep. Not even war gods were immune to parasympathetic backlash, so he gave in to his body's demand for rest since he couldn't do anything else right now. There were no bars to see out of and no windows, just blank stone walls that didn't even have any seams. He would wait and see what happened. After all, he still had a weapon. Garen patted the tattoo of the winged book on his chest. Let's see how well the interrogators do against someone who knows their true names. You've been listening to Part 2 of Gateway to Hell, Book 1 of the Rogue Gods Trilogy, by Melinda Kusira. Subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified when the next part publishes. The Rogue Gods Trilogy is available as an ebook and paperback and soon, a full-cast audiobook. Click the link in the description to order your copy. If you love the Rogue Gods Trilogy, then you'll love Melinda's other epic fantasy adventure books too. They're just as full of magic and mayhem and characters who will do anything to achieve their goals. Check them out at the link in the description, and while you're there, sign up for her newsletter so her characters can talk directly to you. Thank you for listening.